Hey there, good people, and welcome back to the DNP podcast. I'm your host, Debo Agbede, and next week sees the start of the NFL season. Are you excited? I know I am. This episode is going to be part 2 of my predictions for each division in the league, continuing on with the North and South divisions. That's the NFC North, AFC North, NFC South, and AFC South. Last week I predicted the East and West divisions, so if you haven't checked out that episode already, please do so. This pod's available on Spotify and a podcast, so follow on those platforms and give an honest rating. Like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube so you can stay up to date with each upload. Okay, so starting off with the NFC North, and in 4th place I've got the Bears. Yep, the Chicago Bears are my 4th place team, and the reason I say that is because they just seem like they're the least established team in the division. When you look at the other teams that they've got competing with, there's established head coaches who've been there, and there's a familiarity there with a culture set and a system, and quarterbacks that have been there for 4+ years. I guess in one instance, not the case, but at least there's the coach's system that's been set and is in stone, and there's just a culture that has been, in and around the playoffs and in and around, 1 seeds and in terms of the Bears, it just seems like there's a lot more to do, and they're working from behind in comparison to the competition. And it's another thing with the Bears is that they've had a lot of talent on their roster in previous years. I remember that last year, Justin Fields was on the roster, and it was like, oh, we just brought in DJ Moore. And then TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds in free agency is like our linebackers to really, set this team straight and, get us moving forward. And then even last year, it was obviously Caleb's rookie year, which obviously there was that to deal with. But, we just brought in Roma Dunze. We've, invested in our O-line in terms of Darnell Wright coming in as well. And it was like, okay, yeah, this is going to be the year we compete. And it just seems like this year is kind of another year in that sense of, look at what the talent we brought in, and look at and now it's obviously Ben Johnson, who is undoubtedly a great play caller, like we saw that in Detroit over the past couple of years. But as a head coach, there's a lot more that, is put on the mantle, and in a division like this NFC North with the other teams and how strong they all are, like the other 3 teams were playoff teams last year, right? So there's, from a 5-win team to competing with a bunch of playoff teams from last year, there's a step up that needs to be taken. I do believe that Caleb in year 2 will have an improvement. We will see a much better, Caleb Williams. We saw in that preseason game, he looked a lot comfortable than he did last year. And even last year, when you see the reports of the OCs weren't watching film with him, and you're like, oh, come on, like, for any quarterback, you need, someone to take you through what's gone wrong, and he's watching it by himself. Like, he can only see so much that, another person and just another set of ideas in that room, in that film room, would be able to allow him to improve a lot more. So I think in that regard, it's just there's a lot to do for the Bears to kind of get up from the floor, and this is the toughest division in sport, really. So it just seems like there's a lot to be done for them to kind of get up from this 4th place position. And if you're looking at the other 3 teams, the way I see it, the Bears are the only team that I can't see any world where they come out on top. And in that regard, I have them with the 4th most likely to win the division, so I've got them in 4th place. So in 3rd place in the NFC North, I've got the Cheeseheads, the Green Bay Packers. Because the way I see the Green Bay Packers, they are good in every area of the field. They're like just good. They're not great. They're not spectacular. They're not marvelous or any other words you want to look in thesaurus. They are good. They're fine. Like, I obviously look at Jordan Love, he's a good quarterback. You look at the receiving core, there's still a whole wide receiver run. There's a lot of good receivers. You look at Jaden Reed, he's good. You look at Christian Watson when he's on the field, otherwise he's, quite injury prone, fair to say. He's good. You look at Romeo Dobbs, Dontavian Wicks, so the list could go on and on. You look at the defense as well, like it's good. So I just see when you're looking at the other teams who have elite players in important positions, when you're looking at a team that's just, in my opinion, there with regards to the others, it just seems like they are the third place team. They were third last year, and when you're looking at what they've brought in comparison to what they've let out the door, looking at Aaron Banks, well, their O line was good anyway. They've let Jair Alexander walk. He wasn't really there much, but even then, it's a case of when he's on the field, he was, he was a problem for offenses to handle. And you've brought in Nate Hobbs from the Raiders, like he was CB1 there, but the Raiders weren't really doing much. Can he come into Green Bay and be the cornerback one for for a team that wants to contend at the higher echelon of the conference? And even behind Nate Hobbs, you're looking at the cornerback depth. They're working out their sixth receiver at cornerback over the offseason because, damn, you're looking at the roster and it's like, we need more here. And when you're looking at what the other teams in the division have in the receiving core, it's going to be a problem to, you know, win at that high level. And last year they were 1-5 in the division, and their one win was because of a blocked field goal. So you're even looking at that and saying, "Oh boy!" Like in these big games, these games against teams that are on our level or bigger, you need elite in areas of the field. And when, in my opinion, are just good, there's just more I need to see. Obviously, they are an established team. Matt LaFleur has been a great coach for them in the past, and Jordan Love has shown elite, stretches in his career, but not on a consistent basis. And I need to see that for me to have them any higher in the division. And I don't have them making the playoffs either. I just think that, yeah, in regards to the conference, there's just more from the Packers that I need to see to have them any higher than this. So third place are my Green Bay Packers. So in second place in the NFC North, I've got the Detroit Lions. One pride, as they say, right? Yeah, I think the loss of Ben Johnson as offensive coordinator and Aaron Glenn as defensive coordinator just means the team's just going to take a step back, and that's fine. And I think when you're a team that won 15 games last season, it's perfectly fine that even with them you would have taken a step back, but losing them means that there's going to be a slight regression. Also, with Frank Ragnar retiring on the offensive line, replacing him with the rookie, there's going to be a hole in the leadership in that case. But come on, this is a team that has a strong core of players. You're looking at Amon-Ra St. Brown still there, still got Jameer Gibbs, still got David Montgomery, so Sonic and Knuckles are still about, running the ball. Penei Sewell in the offensive line, Sam Laporta, Jared Goff, you're getting Aiden Hutchinson back, you've got Taylor Decker, Alexander Lenny. I'm just rattling off these players that the Detroit Lions have had for the past two seasons where they've really been high up there in the NFC standings and the NFC playoff contention to where this team's not going to completely drop out of the playoffs. They're just, the culture's still there. When you've got Dan Campbell, Motor City Dan, as some people call him, like he is going to keep this team competing no matter what. And I think it's not kind of ridiculous to say that this is still going to be a good team when you've still got, the players about and they're still going to, be up there and a tough out. And obviously with the schedule they've got, they're going to face a lot of the best teams in the league and they're going to get wins out of that because, they're the Detroit Lions and they've got, this just strong mindset and strong culture that is going to, keep them in the upper echelon. I don't have them winning this division because, again, the step back is going to come, and even then, they won the division in week 18 in the last game. So I think the step back is enough for them to drop out as division champions, but it's still going to keep them well in the playoff mix, and in my opinion, well in the playoffs. So that leaves number one and my NFC North champion. I've got the Minnesota Vikings. Why do I believe this? I think they've got the most complete roster in the division. I think when you look top to bottom, when you look at They when wide receivers are fit, they've got Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. Like, that's the best duo of wide receivers in the division right there. Look at their offensive line; that is the same or not even better than last year because you've got Darisaw coming back, you've got Brian O'Neill on the other side, you've got Fries and Ryan Kelly coming in for free agency. Then you look at the interior D line, you've got Javon Hargrave and Jonathan Allen, stocked to a defense that's got Van Ginkel and Dallas Turner, and you've got no, Byron Murphy Jr. in the cornerback. And then Brian Flores as defense coordinator. I'm just looking at this team that has just most of what you need on both ends of the field. And this is a roster that obviously the big question is quarterback, but this is a 14-win team, and you wouldn't say that Sam Darnold was the driving force of the team necessarily last season. And you're obviously switching in with a rookie, which I get. But the way I see it, JJ McCarthy could have the 16th best season of any quarterback in the NFL, and the Vikings would still win this division simply because they've got most, if not everything, you need of the roster around the quarterback to succeed. Obviously, a question of the running back position with Aaron Jones, but Jordan Mason, who they brought in last season, was a fantastic deputy to Christian McCaffrey when he was unavailable for the majority of the year. And when Jordan Mason was in, that was a very, viable, and when you're putting him in now, I think he wins the starting job, or at least gets, the higher share of carries when we go into the season, because obviously Aaron Jones wasn't as effective as you want. But I think Jordan Mason with the offensive line in front of him can improve the Vikings running game even from last year. And last year they were able to have the passing attack that was, suitable enough for them to win 14 games. So the way I see it, I think JJ McCarthy doesn't have to be special in year one. He doesn't have to be, you know, uh, Patrick Mahomes in his first year of starting for this Vikings team to kind of usurp the Lions as the top team in the NFC North. So I believe in this team. I believe that the Vikings are the most suited in this division to come out on top, in my opinion. So there we are. Minnesota Vikings are your NFC North champs for 2025. Now let's move on to the AFC North, and in fourth place in this division, I've got the Cleveland Browns. I'll be honest, I think this is the most obvious fourth place team in any division in the league, simply because this is the this is. I mean, there's another team in this episode that is quite a clear fourth place and has a quite horrible quarterback situation. But I think this one, it's neck and neck out of the two, let's say. So we'll get onto that one when we do. But this one, yep, old man and the two rookies. You've got Joe Flacco, you've got Dylan Gabriel, you've got Shador Sanders, and it just doesn't feel any anyone look from the outside looking in, anyone with any idea that the Browns have a chance of going anywhere in terms of a playoff push, in terms of heck, even competing in most games. It just seems as if, yeah, this is just going to be a nothing burger year for the Cleveland Browns, and like all three of the quarterbacks are going to get meaningful snaps. Like the gauntlet that the Browns have to go through to open the season, Flacco is probably going to get nudged out, and then the year's going to be done. It's like, you know what? Let's see what the rookies have. So Dylan Gabriel gets in. He performs to whatever standard he does. Probably unlikely that he'll be anything special. And the way Shador is obviously quite a celebrity in that regard, and the fans are going to be clamoring for him, and it's going to be like, well, we're losing anyway, so you might as well give us at least a breadcrumb of hope, or a breadcrumb of some sort of someone to cheer for and be vehement in our support for. And as we saw in Shador's instances of coming in the preseason, the Browns fans and maybe even some of the Browns players are like, yeah, let's put in, you know, prime time's kid, let's, perfect timing and all that. Let's get a bit of that in our life, because otherwise it's just going to be a dull year for Cleveland. And when you're an organization at any level, you don't want to be dull. And obviously, Shador's also got the case of, who did the owner pick him? I think it's fair to say that he did, considering Dylan Gabriel was drafted 2 rounds ahead of him, and the coaching staff is kind of positioned Dylan Gabriel, despite what other people outside of the organization will say, that he's our second string, and he's won that sort of second string battle, even with Shador's popularity. So it just seems as if, yeah, the only sort of interest there's going to be with the Cleveland Browns is once Shador gets in, and they're looking at it and it's like, well, maybe he can start for the Browns. But the way the Browns are going to be looking, they're going to have a top pick in 2026 draft, and with the college football season starting this weekend, we'll see a lot of those quarterbacks could easily see themselves as a top pick in the draft for next year. So the Browns are definitely going to be in that market with regards to next year's draft. They've still got great defensive players in terms of Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward, but come on, just it's not enough to take this team in terms of playoff push in any sort of format. So fourth place is going to be the Cleveland Browns. So in third place in the AFC North, I've got the Pittsburgh Steelers. Here we go, Steelers. Yeah, you're gonna ring the terrible towel around, but I don't think it's going to be yeah, not say fun, but it's just going to be another year where the Steelers are just kind of there. They have a stretch where they're going to be, decent, and they're going to get wins, and they're, maybe it's another year where the Mike Tomlin non-losing season streak continues, but I just don't think Aaron Rodgers is a quarterback that's going to, take this team that step further in terms of getting a playoff win, or in terms of getting far in the playoffs. It's just kind of unspectacular in the form of what the skill positions got around them. Like, yeah, you traded for DK Metcalf, and like that's an aggressive move and fair play to you. But other than that, it's what Calvin Austin the third at receiver, and Van Jefferson, I believe, or might be mistaken in that. But Caleb Johnson to replace Najee Harris and Jalen Warren, and as a Falcons fan, Lord Julio watching over me, Arthur Smith, your offensive coordinator, is is not is not something that fills any sort of fan or any sort of observer with confidence that it's going to be an offense that is able to keep up with the others that I've got above them in the division. Like, the defense is going to be stronger. There is a unresolved situation with Cam Hayward, I do believe. So I'm not sure if that might have an impact. But you still got TJ Watt. You've brought in Jalen Ramsey, so you've got pieces on the defense. You've got Joe Porter Jr. as well. That's going to be a team that the defense isn't going to lose in the games. The issue is going to come when the offense is the one tasked with getting the points necessary to win the games that they'll need to be any higher in the division, in my regard. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers last year with the Jets, it was thought that, okay, he's going to be the one to, take the Jets far, and we're going to be a competitive team in the playoffs. And it was I believe, a 5-win season, and it was, 22nd in EPA per play, which is expected points added for the quarterback position, which is basically how positive an effect do you have on each play. And he wasn't adding anything. He wasn't subtracting. I believe it was a 0 in terms of net rating. So he was just, and a lot of the top quarterbacks in the league have positive EPA per plays. Like, they are the ones who are, oh, this is a 3rd and 5 or 3rd and 10, we're not expecting much, and boom, we get the conversion because we've got that guy there. And Aaron Rodgers isn't that guy anymore. And he's obviously got a headstrong personality. He has had rifts with coaches in the past. We'll see Robert Saleh getting fired and that little push and nudge. It just seems that when you've got Arthur Smith as well, who himself is quite a headstrong character, I just don't know if the vibes, which are good now, but the games haven't started. I'm not sure the vibes are going to, keep you through for a 17-game season. So Not saying that this is the year that they get the losing streak or the losing season streak of not having it broken, but I definitely do not believe that the Steelers are going to be any higher than third in the AFC North. So third place, Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, second place in the AFC North, I've got the Cincinnati Bengals with a playoff spot because this offense is going to fly. And they've obviously flown in previous years when, Burrow's been healthy. And last year they were that little bit out of it. And even with the defense that is, well, borderline atrocious for them last season in most games, like they would get 33 points or that, and then they'd give up 36. So yeah, it's a loss in the record. Sorry, boys. But they were still in that late season stretch. That offense was pushing them, and they were, riding that wave with Burrow, Chase, and Higgins, now all settled and committed long term. So there's that. They've all been paid. They've all been taken care of. So there's that they don't have to worry about, and they can obviously continue their high flying ways in that regard. And I don't believe there's any reason to look at the Bengals and think this offense isn't going to be the same. Yeah, no, they are, because Chase is near unguardable, and then you've got Higgins as a number two receiver. Yeah, the offense isn't something to be worried about. And now you've added, or there's Chase Brown in the backfield, who came on really strong last season and now has a full year to obviously be that explosive back out of the backfield and have another weapon to worry about from a Cincinnati point of view. So yeah, this is going to be a team that's going to, light up the scoreboard without any question. And at least now, as I recorded, they have sorted out the Trey Hendrickson situation, at least for this year. They've given him a raise, obviously up to $30 million. So he's going to be back, and hopefully, knock on wood, since he hasn't been practicing, that he doesn't suffer any sort of soft tissue injuries and has, enough of a practice time to get ready for the year ahead. And Shamar Stewart was taken care of weeks ago, so at least they'll have a first round pick that they can develop and can take some load off of Trey Hendrickson in the pass rushing sense, because you look at Trey Hendrickson in that defense, and there wasn't really anyone that was helping him out. Like, he led the league in sacks, and the defense was still atrocious and was still giving up, loads of points. So it's still a TBD on that, but at least they've got Hendrickson and Stewart that can start the year and, hopefully make their impact for them. The biggest thing is going to be whether a new defensive coordinator, a new set of ideas can, make them a more suitable, more real, a real outfit on defense, because you've brought in Al Golden from Notre Dame, so you've brought him from college. Obviously, Notre Dame Fighting Irish did have, a run to the championship game last year, and their defense was a big part of that. So you're hoping that you can at least translate that over to the NFL. But I think the offense at least will carry their weight and will take this team to the playoffs. So second place, I've got the Cincinnati Bengals. So that leaves as the winners of the AFC North, the Baltimore Ravens. And simply put, they've got the best quarterback running back combo in the division, in the league, really, with Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, both in number two in EPA per play added last season in their positions. They are just the upper echelon. There's nothing more to be said about that. I think they're the only team in the division that has the balance of both the good offense and good defense. Like, you look at the Bengals, they've got the great offense, but the defense is lacking. And then the Steelers, they've got the good defense, and the offense is lacking. Like, I just think if you could combine the Bengals offense and the Steelers defense into one team so that they can just combine together and compete with the Ravens, now that would be a scary outfit. But that's unfortunately for those teams not the case. And yeah, the Ravens are just, the best placed team to win the division. They had kind of a couple of worries in the cornerback position there with who they played last year, but they brought in Jair Alexander, they brought in Chidobe Wozier, so they've got Marlon Humphrey and Nate Wiggins there, and they've just added, even better pieces to go alongside them to kind of alleviate that sort of worry. They're similar to the Bills in a sense where this is kind of a formality almost. Like they are just the best team, like barring injuries, they are the team that's going to win the division. So I'm not really judging them on winning the division. I'm judging them on what they can do in the playoffs and whether they can, get over that hump of the Kansas City Chiefs who have defeated them in the past. And heck, I think the Ravens are well placed to do so. So yeah, there they are, first place in the AFC North.
Shifting our attention over to the NFC South. In fourth place, we've got the New Orleans Saints. And yeah, I think when I mentioned earlier that the Browns are an obvious number four in the division, I think this one just a bit under, because it is the NFC South at the end of the day, so it is quite a tight division historically. But yeah, I think the way the Saints team is looking, it's just going to be another rebuild year. We've recently had, in even the past couple of days, Spencer Rattler announced as the starting quarterback for the season. So, it's a bit of a worrying omen for Tyler Shuck there, in the sense that he was second round pick of this up past draft, and he isn't able to beat our fifth round pick from the year prior. Obviously, Spencer Rattler was a famed high school recruit, number one, I believe, in his class. But there's going into this season, you just do worry for the Saints in that regard. It's going to be a big challenge for Kellen Moore as the new head coach there. You don't have Jalen Hurts anymore. You don't have Saquon Barkley in that backfield. Alvin Kamara is still decent, but you don't have Devontae Smith and AJ Brown. You've got Chris Olave and hoping Rashid Shaheed can be that deep threat for you. But yeah, it's just it's different. It's a different level here for the Saints in terms of how much of a drop off it is to what Kellen Moore was play calling for last year. So they're going to find themselves second best in most of the games, if not all of the games they've got this season. And when you consider that they've had their cap space issues in recent years, and they still are quite, towing that line. Thankfully for them, Derek Carr was able to, give back all of actually his contract when he retired. But yeah, this Saints team it's not one to be fancied in any sort of way, and they are quite clearly the fourth place team that I've got here in the NFC South. Alright, next up in third place, we've got the Carolina Panthers, and to be fair to them, it just seems like the feel-good factor has come back in Carolina. The way they ended last season, Bryce Young coming on strong, like, oh, this is our quarterback now. We didn't completely mess up when we traded for that number one overall pick, giving the Bears Caleb Williams, giving up DJ Moore and the second round picks and so on and so forth. Like, yes, Bryce Young can be the guy to take us there. And yeah, when you look at a situation where they've added a Ted McMillan to what is already, to be fair to them, a solid O-line, and has been in the years past, despite obviously their lack of success on the win column, and Chuba Hubbard in the running backs position, and adding a Rico Dowdle, and it's like, okay, yeah, the offense for the Carolina Panthers can be something that's really to be reckoned with, and really can get them wins on the schedule. And this isn't going to be another year where they're 5-12 and they're going to be in the doldrums. I actually think they'll give it a right old good go for the playoff spot, for a 7th seed, for a wild card. And I think in years past, when you're looking at what the Carolina Panthers have been, it's quite a stark improvement, in all honesty. So I can give the GM credit, Dan Morgan, since he's come in. Like, the Panthers are going to be an outfit that isn't just, you're not looking at the schedule and like, oh, easy win there. You're not looking at the schedule and thinking, oh, nice, it's a meal ticket free one, let's go. The issue I do have with the Panthers, though, is the fact that their defense, and especially on the back end, still lacks the reinforcements for me to think that they're going to be able to defend the pass much better. Like, they were 28th in pass yards per attempt last season, and the only addition they've really made in that back end, that is obviously somewhat established, is Trayvon Moehrig. So you're hoping that like your Lathan Ransoms and other rookies on that back end can be, can help in that regard. But yeah, I do think that's what's going to hold them back from a playoff spot and really going much further than that. But I definitely see this as a team that maybe obviously third place in the South, but like at 9 wins and really can be somewhere viable in the years to come. So this is kind of like a year where, okay, we've set a good foundation for a whole 17 games, and next year we make 3 reinforcements that put us right up there with the teams above them in the division. But yeah, I think it's a good omen for the Panthers in years to come. But third place in the South. Yes, number 2 in the NFC South, I've got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with a playoff spot because, yeah, you can't deny that they have been the class of the NFC South for the last 4 years, obviously winning 4 straight divisions. Like ever since Brady came in, really, it's just been theirs and no one else. And then you've obviously brought in Baker Mayfield in the last 2 years, and yeah, he's shown to be one of the upper tier quarterbacks in the league. Like he's definitely the most established quarterback in the division for sure, and they do have really good options in that receiver position. You'll see Mike Evans is still fit. Obviously, Chris Gordon starting season on the pup list, so we'll see how that goes for the season. But then in the first round they drafted Emeka Ibuka, so yeah, I think the Buccaneers offense will definitely be a force to be reckoned with still. Well, to an extent, obviously you got Buckler in the backfield, but it's just another year where you've changed the OCE, and looking at what Liam Cohen was able to do for them last year in terms of just opening up everything. Like before last year, they weren't really just with Rashad Wright as his own. That the running game was kind of a non-factor, and obviously they were still able to win divisions. But that's when the rest of the division was kind of they were all bad. It was all consecutive bad, and the Bucs were just the best of a bad bunch, so to speak. But then last year, when there's a bit more competition, obviously being swept by one team in the division, who I do have winning, we'll get to that. They just seems like what Liam Cohen was able to do was fantastic and great, and it just seems like losing that again and having to learn another sort of new system and another play caller's sort of tendencies. It just seems like there's a level of consistency that may drop, and then when you're seeing the fact that Tristan Wirfs is going to miss time, Antoine Winfield, Levante David, it's just like there's an older roster in terms of the top level guys is just dwindling a little bit, and they're getting maybe less available on the field, where it's like you kind of not sure if the consistency can hold up for another 17 games, and maybe their rope is going to, get cast a little, and they won't maintain the level necessary to win the division in comparison to the team I have winning to sustain that push for the whole 17 games. So second place, I've got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now this leaves the team I have winning the NFC South, the Atlanta Falcons. Now I'm not just saying that because I've got Lord Julio watching over me. I do genuinely believe that as this is a team that has been on the cusp of the playoffs for years in this division, even despite having losing records, it's always gone to the final weekend, and just seeing this offense, it has the potential to be the most explosive, not just in the division, but also in the league. You're looking at Bijan Robinson in the backfield. You've got Drake London on the outside. Dion Mooney is receiver 2. I mean, I'm wearing the Florida Gators sweatshirt in almost honor of Kyle Pitts and what he's capable of, and we all know he's capable of, but just hasn't been able to put that all together on the field. It's just a team that I feel has the highest ceiling in the division, and just with Michael Penix and what the cameo he had at the end of last year, he did show very high level play. Obviously there was a bit erratic, but rookie year, having to be thrust into a playoff race as a rookie, considering you haven't really been training with the first team players. He now has an off season to train with the first team guys, and he made a point of saying, hey, you're going to see a lot of the Penix to Pitts connection, and if Pitts is able to perform at a high level, and you've got Drake London and Bijan Robinson, it just seems like there's an offense that's going to be reckoned with. There's an offense that is going to light things up with their 5-time primetime games this year, and it's looking at the step they took to improve that pass rush with double dipping in the first round with Jalen Walker and James Pierce Jr. It just seems like, okay, this is a team that feels they're in win now mode, and obviously the hope is, and yes, at least with the defensive end, it is more of a hope because the offense was able to show high levels of play, even with Kirk Cousins, who did falter off ending the year. But bringing in a Jeff Ulbrich to bring a defense up to a higher level, who was marshalling a number one defense over in New York with the Jets, it just seems like, okay, this is the year that things come together for the Atlanta Falcons, and they're able to put a real charge in place to bring themselves to the top of this NFC South division and to the playoffs for the first time in 7 years. So I just feel like it's almost overdue for this team, and this is the year that they're able to put the things together. So, I mean, have I, shown too much of fandom here, shown too much of my, bias? But the way I see it, I just can't, I just can't, skirt anything. This is what I believe is going to happen, and yeah, Atlanta Falcons, number one NFC South champs. Here we go. So, we move on to the AFC South, and in fourth spot, I've got the Indianapolis Colts. Now, obviously, we've had the news recently that Daniel Jones was announced as a starter for the team. Great, there's clarity in that situation now in that room, but it is still probably the worst starting quarterback in the division, I'd say. Obviously, you've got a rookie in there, but I mean, you probably have more faith in the number one overall pick rookie coming in than you do in Daniel Jones, considering what he's been able to show throughout his career. So I think in that case, it's the fourth team has the fourth quarterback in the division. That's kind of fair. You're also looking at a team that lost Will Fries and Ryan Kelly in free agency, so that interior of the O-line is weaker. You've only really got Quentin Nelson there on that offensive line that you can really say, okay, we have one of the best in class here. So that's a worry. Team that's obviously got good skill players and position players. Jonathan Taylor, you've got Tyler Warren, who you got in the first round this year. Michael Pittman's a solid wide receiver one, but you just have a feeling that the quarterback play is just going to hold this team back. Like, despite this being a division that's going to be tight from top to bottom, I just think the Colts don't have as much as the other teams, in my opinion, to be any higher than fourth in the division. In the third spot, I've got the Tennessee Titans. Yes, this obviously would be quite a jump off the map for a team that had the number one overall pick last year, but in that number one overall pick is a player in Cam Ward who just has a lot more than you'd look at a Will Levis and a Mason Rudolph from last year. And just when you consider the upgrade at the most important position on the field that the Tennessee Titans have now undergone, it just seems like, okay, this is going to be a refresh for the franchise here for us to now kick on. And hey, in the last 2 years, we've seen rookie quarterbacks step right in and change the fortunes for a team. You look at obviously CJ Stroud 2 years ago, you look at Jim Daniels last year, and now obviously I'm not saying that the Titans are going to make that sort of jump, but I definitely see them improving a lot more. The investments in the first round O-lineman, you look at Skronsky a couple of years ago, JC Latham, they've just brought in Dan Moore and then Kevin Zeitler in free agency as well. Like, that's an offensive line that is, again, another much improved unit for this Tennessee Titans team. Obviously, there's a problem with, the receivers that, okay, well, behind Calvin Ridley, we've got a lot of rookies, a lot of unproven quantities that we're not sure can keep that team strong, but they definitely see Cam Ward's going to have a pocket to be able to work. And we saw a couple of throws he was making in preseason. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, this is going to be a guy for the Tennessee Titans for the years to come. So I expect that running game and that passing game to be a lot stronger with Tony Pollard in the backfield as well. As this Titans team is going to be a lot more serious on that, passing front. And on that defensive front, hey, they were the first, in passing yards against and passing yards per attempt last season. So it's not as if the Titans were just getting, moved on in the passing front. Like, that defense was strong with obviously having Amani Hooker in that back end. You've got Jarius Sneed, who they brought over from the Chiefs last summer. It's like, okay, yeah, the Titans are, they're a sleeper team. Fair to say, they're a team that can. I can see them, being higher than third in the division. I can see them maybe pushing the other two that I've got above them. But yeah, I do believe that there's going to be much improvement. Not enough to have them above the other two, but definitely enough to say, okay, yeah, we're going to move forward with this guy, Cam Ward, and we're going to be a serious outfit for the years to come. Now, next up, second place, we've got the Houston Texans. Yes, Houston Texans. I have them dropping from champions of the division. And yeah, I do say this because I just look at what they've done in that offensive line in terms of letting Larry Thompson walk out the door, trading him over to the Washington Commanders. You then look at the interior line, which was a big issue for them last year, and CJ Stroud almost did miraculously to get them to the divisional round last year. But I just think that move's a bit of a head scratcher for me, a bit of a just kind of not sure what the thought process is there, and at least in that regard, and you may be taking your quarterback a bit for granted and not really making a big investment on the interior. Obviously, they brought in Arion Teashri, who looks like is going to be the starting tackle for them to be their second round pick last year. So you hope obviously he's able to be a good blindside guy for Stroud. But when you're trying to run the ball, and what it seems to be is that Joe Mixon, who was a big part of what they were doing last year, is going to miss significant time this season due to an injury. You're like, I'm just not sure that the offense can, maintain the levels they had in years past. Obviously, you still got Nico Collins. Obviously, Tank Dell had that unfortunate injury for him, and Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel. You're hoping, okay, they can kind of fill that gap and can maintain the high receiver play that we had in the last year. But it just seems as if that offense is just going to be take a step back and to be quite much worse than they were last year. Like, the defense still going to be strong. You still have Danielle Hunter, you have Will Anderson Jr., you've brought in C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who will bring in that Super Bowl experience from last year. But I just think the offense taking that step back leaves the top of the division a bit wide open. It leaves them a bit vulnerable in terms of maintaining themselves at the top spot. So I have them in second tier and missing out on the playoffs and that division championship. So as AFC South champs, I have the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I say this because I believe that Liam Cohen's going to be the difference maker for this team this season. When you look at what he was able to do with the Buccaneers last year and how he was able to kind of marshal Baker Mayfield's best season, best production for himself in his career, and what he can kind of transport that into for Trevor Lawrence, a guy who's shown that he can be good level franchise quarterback, a high level franchise quarterback for a team, in making that 27-point comeback in the playoffs a couple of years ago when he had that first kind of real coach for him. And obviously things haven't gone the Jaguars' way in the past 2 years when it comes to injuries, when it comes to other certain things. But I believe what the new regime has been able to bring in, with James Gladstone at GM now trading up, making that aggressive move to bring in Travis Hunter, who can inject life into both sides of the ball, really. He can be obviously a cornerback, as we've seen for him at Colorado last year, and then Heisman Trophy winner, and then be an effective wide receiver 2 to what is a great wide receiver 1 in Brian Thomas Jr. So what's happened for the Buccaneers last season and what he can implement for the Jaguars this season, I do believe that Liam Cohen, Travis Hunter, the new blood that was brought in, can really make a positive impact for this team on both sides of the ball. Obviously, the running game, Travis Etienne did have quite a disappointing season last year, but he can get much better. You've got Tank Bigsby behind him. That's a good tandem right there. And if not, I mean, Bucky Irving wasn't exactly a high pick last year, and when you see what Bayshore Tootin in terms of speed, in terms of, he can be a dynamic element for the Jaguars this year. So I do believe whoever it may be, whether it's Etienne, whether it's Bigsby, whether it's Tootin, like that, they're going to have a good running game in Jacksonville. I also say that there are great pieces on defense as well. You look at Trayvon Walker, you look at Josh Hines-Allen, Tyson Campbell, Darnell Savage, Eric Armstead. Like there's great pieces on that defense for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I know this is probably a hot take, but come on, there's always going to be a surprise team in every year. Like who would have seen the Commanders coming? Who would have seen the Texans coming the year before that? Like there are teams that surprise, and in my view, the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to be that surprise team of the year and leave themselves as AFC South champions. So those are the part 2 of my predictions for the NFL. What do you think? Do you agree with what I've said? Who else would you have winning each division in the NFL? Leave that in the comments below. Obviously Spotify, YouTube, there are comment sections. Like and subscribe for more content. Follow on Spotify and Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening to this. Just give a follow and support the boy. So thank you for listening, and I hope to hear from you soon. Bye bye.